All right, thank you. So the title is Going Beyond the Django ORM Limitations with Postgres. I know that's a mouthful. Basically, this is going to be kind of a whirlwind of how do you get all the cool stuff that's in Postgres and use it inside Django. I know Christoph covered some of this yesterday, and his answer was mostly use SQL. I'm going to try to give some other options because, really quick, a show of hands. Who here really likes to write SQL? That's still way too many hands. It's really powerful, it's great, but it's not a pretty language to read or write. So first, a couple of PSAs. There's a lot of Macs in the audience. If you're using Postgres and not using Postgres.app, take a look at it. It's native installer, really straightforward to get set up. You don't have to muck with Mac ports or brew or any of that. The other one is a shameless plug for Postgres Weekly. It's a weekly newsletter that has not things on the Postgres mailing list, but things that are actually relevant to application developers, so everyone here. So first off, why Postgres? Why do you care about it? Who here doesn't use Postgres today? Okay, so hopefully I can convince all of you by the end. Everyone else, hopefully you know it's a great database. This is actually a quote from a coworker describing it as the Emacs of databases. I'm actually not an Emacs user, but I think what he means here is basically it's a platform to build things on. Very much that, Django's a framework with batteries included, but very extensible. Postgres is kind of the same thing when it comes to databases. But if you're looking for more information, here's kind of the TLDR on why to use Postgres. Data types, foreign data wrappers are awesome, so you can query things like Redis or Mongo from inside Postgres. Window functions, basically it's a pretty long list. And with the newest release, it gets even better. But really the problem is kind of with Django. So this is actually from the Django docs, and what it's saying is we're going to treat all databases the same. We're going to treat them fair. We're not going to give preferential treatment. We're going to try to be equal and fair. This creates a few problems. So the first with data types. So in Postgres, we've got data types that like this. Christoph kind of covered this yesterday. There's a huge array of data types, and it's actually, I noticed this morning, I'm missing two types, the range type and the JSON data type, which were in Postgres 9.2. But I mean, you can see, get an idea of some of them. So you've got 6 types just for numbers. You've got IP and MAC address. You've got shapes. Even without PostGIS, you can do basic geographic stuff. And it works pretty well. Now the problem is that Django says all of this is the same as this. And this slide, the data types are directly from the SQLite docs. And this actually kind of bugs me because null is not a data type, yet they say it is. So I'm not sure what the optional values are there. So basically it's down to 4. So I have trouble reconciling how, Django makes this compared to this. Then there's indexes. So Christoph hit on this a little bit yesterday. I'm going to cover it from a little bit of a different perspective. So in Postgres, you've got a ton of types. You've got a B tree, a gen, a gist, KNN, which is k nearest neighbor, a space partition gist. You've got create index concurrently. So if you've ever added an index to a table and it's had to rewrite the table, it's taken 30 minutes, an hour, and you can't do anything on that table, create index concurrently solves this for you. It basically builds up the index in the background and then swaps over. Create index concurrently doesn't work natively with South because South runs inside a transaction. So there's a few problems there. But again, so indexes, you're looking at Django tackling some of that, but then more so South. And it's also trying to compare it to MySQL, where there's something there. But enough kind of ranting, because Django's not that bad. It gives us some pretty good flexibility to take advantage of various data types. So digging into some of that, let me go ahead and highlight a few and see how we can take advantage of them. So the first is arrays. How many here have used the array type in Postgres before? Okay, how many people knew it existed even? Okay, at least a few more. So this is actually quickly becoming one of my kind of favorite really simple data types that I use pretty heavily. Anytime I'm doing something with tagging, it's a perfect case for it. If there's blog posts that you need to tag a category with, items in a store where you want to tag, it's related to this. So right here, I've got a really basic table that's got an array there. Really doesn't look much different than if you were doing it in Python. From here, I can insert values into that. So I can insert something like, the Django pony is something you can buy, and a Ruby gem is something you can buy, and tag them with programming, one with jewelry, one with animals, right? Pretty straightforward. But how do you do this in Django? Like, do you need to direct down to raw SQL? Fortunately, you don't. So Django has a few extensions, a few kind of third-party packages that add this. So in this case, you're going to install basically that package. And don't worry too much on notes if you're worried about package names. All of the slides will be up online right away. And basically a expression manager, which lets you do a little bit of syntactical sugar to be able to query that. And then I'm going to define it in my model. So my model, I'm just going to say I have an array of basically a varchar. It could be integers. It can be an array of whatever you want. Then in Django, I'm actually going to use this. So I'm going to say when I create it, just send in an array. Then I can query on it. So that query's a little gnarly. It's not too bad. It's not as bad as raw SQL, really. But what you're doing there is sending in a special SQL operator that says, does it contain this tag? And you can do, does it contain all tags? Does it contain any of these list of tags? So you get that full flexibility inside Django now. And then Postgres has extensions. So out of the box, it has a ton of data types, but there's extensions that ship with stock Postgres that you just have to turn on that give you a whole lot more functionality. So there's DB link, so you can query from Postgres to Postgres, completely separate databases. There's UUID data type, which is pretty great. I'd encourage people, if you're using, actually just swap it out for a primary key in a database. Swap it out and use UUID. And any large-scale system where you have to scale up and a serial ID doesn't work, it's good to go for. Fuzzy string matching is a fun one. There's a ton in here. One particular one is HStore. So NoSQL is a bit of a buzzword. It means a lot of things to a lot of different people. Specifically, what I mean here is like a flexibility in your schema. Do you have to define a column ahead of time? Postgres had something called HStore. HStore is a key value store inside Postgres. I think Christoph mentioned it briefly yesterday. It's really nice, flexible. It's a key value store of only string to string, so it's a little limiting there, but I found it still works pretty well for a lot of use cases. We actually use it really heavily in production at Heroku and a lot of systems, and it scales fine, it's performant, it works. And we don't have to go and define columns ahead of time. So in a database, I would just say create extension to turn it on. You only have to do this once, and then you just start using it like it's any other data type. And then I can insert random keys and values. I don't have to define these ahead of time. I can insert, state suddenly. I can insert phone number. I can insert whatever data I want. And with the proper indexes, this is optimized. This is fast. You can filter on it. You can do anything you'd expect to do in standard SQL. And then, of course, as you would expect, you can do this directly in Django. So you don't actually have to drop down to raw SQL again. You're going to install Django HStore. You're going to import it. You're basically going to define your model there. And you're going to have this little kind of manager to take care of some things for you. You don't really have to worry too much about it to use it. It does a little bit of magic under the covers for you. And then, of course, you can create it in Django. So you can say, just like you'd expect, here's my dictionary as my value for data. Data is just the column name, the field name. You can add new things as you insert new ones. And, of course, you can query on them. So you can filter where it has a color at all. So if it doesn't have the key color, it doesn't return. Or where color is equal to pink or rating is equal to 5. And you can be pretty flexible in this. So HStore is great. One thing I want to call out is JSON, which is in Postgres 9.2. Christoph talked a little bit about this also. It's fairly limited in 9.2, but you can use PLv8. So PLv8 is a full JavaScript engine inside Postgres. It's the same V8 engine that's running in Chrome, essentially, that's now inside your database. So JSON by itself is pretty simple. You can do just basic validation. In Postgres 9.3, this gets a lot better. But with PLV8, you can do things like this. Inside your database, create a function that executes any JavaScript you send into it. But please don't do things like that. SQL injection attacks are bad enough. But you get the idea. Basically, you can do anything you want that's JavaScript right inside your database. It would be great to see this start to come in as Django properly supported as using the JSON data type as the support gets richer and richer. And I'm casually glancing at the core team down here in front, poking at them. Queuing. So queuing, everyone pretty much uses Celery, right? Or, yeah, I think probably pretty much everyone's using Celery or used it. There's a lot of options when you're using Celery. Your database is one of them, and when you use your database, it usually looks something like this at some point. It's great at first because you don't have to spin up something else. And that works until you actually have too much data. And typically what Celery is doing is polling your database. So every X seconds or milliseconds, it's running a query and saying, do I have new jobs? Most people then move to Redis pretty commonly, or something that has pub sub. Fortunately, actually, Postgres is really great at this. So Postgres actually has pub sub inside the database. It's called listen notify, but it's the same thing. You can basically say, I want to listen for this event, and it'll notify you when it happens. So just don't use it with polling. Fortunately, there's a Celery backend called Trunk. Basically, install it, plug it in, and it's going to take advantage of this. So your database can go much further as a queue as well. And it actually works really well for this. We run in the Ruby equivalent of this, sadly, in production at Heroku. But it's the exact same idea of pub subbing your database and using it as a queue since the data is already there. So basically, you're just going to install the package, and then you define your broker, which is the database URL. So text search. Text search is actually, it seems like a really common theme at Django conferences. Typically, there's something that looks like this. There's a talk about, Lucene or Sphinx, or it seems like Solr and Elasticsearch are really common lately. Of course, Postgres is also good at this. It has really rich full text searching. You can actually dive really deep with it, and it scales up pretty well. It looks a little more gnarly than some of the other things. Getting it in, so basically you're going to define a TS vector, create some indexes, and create a procedure to kind of maintain this full text search for you. This is all you're going to have to do on your database side, and then from here on out, you can start to use this in Django. So you can have a search manager, and it's something that manages the vector field. Define that in your model, and then you can say which fields do you care about. Do you want to use a specific language catalog? You can use multiple ones. Basically configure this, and then it works for you. And then from there, it's pretty trivial to actually use it once it's set up in your models. There's basic operators saying, does it contain both of these things? Does it contain either of these things? And the docs are pretty good for that. So jumping out a little bit from some Django-specific things, indexes are something that Crystal talked about, conditional indexes, exclusion indexes, and that kind of thing. Well, there's actually a whole other set of indexes in Postgres, which is all the different types. Usually when you do create index, it's going to be a B-tree index. The rest of these start to suddenly get confusing, right? It looks kind of like, what do I choose? What do I use? What should I care about? A really basic guide. B-tree is usually what you care about, unless you're doing something special. If you're doing kind of any of the data types I talked about before, you may want something else. So gen, or generalized inverted index, this isn't an absolute. There are cases where another one is more performant, but this is a pretty good rule of thumb. If you're using multiple values in one column, it's what you want. Array and HStore are these, right? You've got multiple different keys and values or multiple values inside a single column. Add your gen index, it's going to index everything in that column, and then you can get the efficiencies on it. It's going to be a little bigger on disk size than I think a gist, but generally it works well. For a generalized search tree or a gist index, full text search, PostGIS, or dealing with shapes are the pretty basic rule of thumbs. There are cases where you can use them with arrays or HStore and they're more efficient, but rule of thumb, if you're using any of these things, these are the kind of indexes you want to be adding. For k-nearest neighbor, it's going to find nearest distance between two things, similarity essentially. And space partition gist, I actually still don't understand it. It's been explained to me many times over. I hear it's supposed to be good for phone numbers, but I still actually haven't seen a real world case beyond that of like, what does it actually do, how does it work, and when do I need it? So for now, I would say just punt on that one. If you're using, looking to do geospatial stuff, Postgres has pretty good shape types to start with. If you need more than that, just use GeoDjango. It's there, it works, it has great support. It deserves its own kind of 30-minute slot. You can dive pretty deep into it. A few other kind of random things. So read-only mode. How many people here have the ability to flip their site into a read-only mode? Sorry, Andrew just raised his hand, and as I think the only person. And this is actually the example. So this is something that's really, really handy if you're running a site that something happens to the database, which inevitably can happen. There can be security things where you don't want to write to it. You need to upgrade, emergency maintenance, all these sort of things. And what typically happens is you pull your site offline. A better option, and Landard actually talks about this, and I couldn't believe there wasn't already a Django package to just do this for you. Basically, flip it into read-only mode. Users can't log in, they can't post things, but they can basically read things, and your site stays pretty operational. So Landard was actually able to do a complete MySQL to Postgres migration with really no downtime. Yeah, users couldn't post to the site for a few hours, but an actual zero downtime from a kind of end user functionality. So here's like a really basic utility, Django DB tools that enables this. It's pretty lightweight right now, so I'd welcome pull requests to it. But basically, it's a middleware that you flip on that kind of nulls out the user session and prevents you posting data. So basically, it's a pretty lightweight hack of how can you not write to your database. With a little bit of addition, it could actually have the floating banner as well, similar to the Django debug toolbar, saying, "Hey, we're in read-only mode. What's that mean? Explain it to users." And basically, you just put in the middleware, flip your read-only mode to true, or do it the better way, which is just read that from an environment variable. You shouldn't be hard coding these things. You shouldn't have to deploy to do this. You should be able to flip a switch. Or this could also come from Zookeeper or from something like Nexus that's controlling feature flags, that kind of thing. But it should basically be set in your code and read from somewhere outside it. All right, finally, one more thing. Who here runs, so I saw hands earlier, I think yesterday, of how many people run Postgres. Who here runs PG Bouncer or a server-side connection puller? Okay, so great for all of you that do. For everyone that doesn't, your Django requests probably look more like this than you realize. Django for the longest time had no persistent connections or no connection pooling. In 1.6, it's there for persistent connections. It's turned off by default, and huge thanks to Emmerich for getting that in. Actually, yeah, a round of applause for that one. It's pretty huge.